I know health's always been a concern. How are you health-wise going into the national tournament?
Well, I don't know that many people this time of the year, at least in this sport, are 100%, but I think we're all at a level where they feel comfortable that they can go in there and give it their best shot and have an opportunity to succeed. So, I feel good about that too.
And I know you're interested in all five, but is there any that are of particular interest that could be maybe to the fans, a match here or two that you think, the matchups are pretty interesting?
Well, Rader's probably catches local people pretty interestingly. That Rader, his first 2 years, he's the first true freshman to place in a national tournament. In that tournament, he pinned the wrestler from UC Davis, who won the NCAA tournament the next year. In Rader's second year, he majored the wrestler from Ohio State. Majored means beat by 8 points or more. That wrestler won the national tournament the next 2 years. So Brandon really felt he was really oriented and progressing toward winning that national title, and he'd be the first true West Virginian to do that ever. And then he incurred, some very unfortunate luck where he hasn't been healthy for 3 years and was given a 6th year. Now in this tournament, if he wins his first match, he wrestles Caldwell from North Carolina State that won the national tournament, beat the wrestler from Iowa that was going for his third. It was the most improbable win of the tournament, and he did it in like a 14-10 match that had everyone talking about it, and he's very dangerous. He is like fighting that boxer that can hit you with a knockout punch from anywhere, that he's like that with wrestling. And Brandon's a little bit that way too, and this wrestler from NC State hasn't had a full season, so he's not got that whole season of preparation and conditioning. And Brandon watched him in his qualifier on the internet and noticed that his conditioning looked a little lacking. And so I believe Brandon at this time of his career doesn't have any fear of anyone. Now that doesn't mean he's going to win, but they're two very similar wrestlers. They're very good athletes, and they can score big points in bunches. That probably this match won't go to the end one way or another, but it'll be a really interesting match to watch.
Does Brandon have the confidence in his body? Does he have that in his mind? I mean, obviously, every time you go on the mat, that's where's he at there?
Well, that's hard for me to assess. Yeah. That's a good question for him. But from watching it from the outside, that he didn't have that at the beginning of the year. Our way to say it, he wasn't Brandon for the first part of the year. That he got pinned 3 times, I think, and I don't think he's ever been pinned in his life. That he was just not confident in his ability to execute, and in his mind's eye, he was still just as good as before he was injured and out of lineup. And then the disparity, the distance between where his mind's eye had him and where he actually was, that distance caused him a little insecurity that he'd never had before. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that makes sense, that there's just that gap, because in his mind's eye, you still feel, hey, I can go out and step right in where I was, and he couldn't. And when there was that much distance, he did lose some confidence, and that was what he had going. He was supremely confident. And now I think he kind of accepted where he was, and it was really a testament to his character, where he just took that and all he did was come in the room and work harder, and then he'd go out and fall short again. And he's worked his way back through to where technically and confidence-wise he's approaching where he was before. Now, I don't know that he's wrestling right where he was, but it's irrelevant for me to make that evaluation. He is where he is. He's at a good level to where if he gets his best wrestling out and things fall right, that he can beat the best people in the country. So this is going to be fun.
Tournament wrestling is different than dual wrestling, is it? It's more survive and advance type mentality, isn't it? That's pretty much the approach you take with these guys.
Right. I mean, during the season, you're always doing 2 things. You're wrestling for the team to win a dual meet, and yourself. Now, really the focus is on the individual. That during a tournament, you can sometimes go out there and you just have to win ugly. It's just you don't have your magic, and you've got to workman way, find a way to win, and then that next match you might have it's flowing again, and you just don't overreact to it. You've just got to find a way to come out on top, advance yourself through the bracket, and take your best shot at getting where your ultimate goals and dreams have been. And
how do you prepare your wrestlers for the bracket? Do you have them focus on the guy you got at hand, don't worry about that? How do you approach that? How do you work with your guys on that?
Well, and the thing is that we aren't reinventing the wheel, that these guys that are on our team have wrestled successfully most of their life, and they've been in tournaments. And really that's a mantra they've heard since they were in elementary school. And it's easier said than done, but I would like to trust that the guys that are going are very good at it, that you take the person that's in front of you before you don't wrestle the final match when you're in the quarterfinals, or you aren't seeing the guy in the finals. So you learn you've got to approach one match at a time. When that one's done, you put it aside, and now you get ready for the next guy. So.
Well, styles are different. I mean, each round could be a different style of wrestler. You got to be able to do it a lot of different ways, right?
Well, and that's true. And if you're inviting the top 32 people in the country to the bracket, that even if their record is really inferior to yours, that they may have a certain style that doesn't match up well with yours, that you better respect every opponent and be ready to get your best wrestling out and battle that whole 7 minutes, or you're not going to make it through. And and Greg, Greg won't like me bringing this into it, but Greg Jones is a returning national champion. He's #1 seed, and he's drawing someone unseeded with a very average record first round. Now, who would predict that wrestler would be able to defeat Greg? But the styles matched up, and I won't get into what it was, but it wasn't, Greg didn't expect it. He'd never seen him before, and the styles matched up just right where, the improbable happened. And I know that wrestler didn't place and never did place another time, and Greg went on and won his 3rd NCAA title. But so you've got to be prepared to wrestle each person regardless and not worry about record, uniform, whatever, and just get your best wrestling out and find a way to win.
In your experiences in a national tournament, where do most of the upsets take place? Where does it happen? Is it in the early rounds, or is it on into the tournament? Where does it usually happen?
I don't know if I have a statistical answer. It's more anecdotal in my memory that where you worry the most when you're putting someone in there that has this high seed is the first couple rounds. That sometimes it just takes a while to get into the tournament. You just want to get the first match or two out of the way to where now you're in the flow of the tournament and so forth. So as a coach, I worry the most when you're entering a top seed is getting them ready for that first match or two, because really it takes care of itself. When you start getting into the quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, your natural instincts take over. You're ready to wrestle. You're ready to compete for what you've been dreaming of, what that goal is. Those first 2 rounds, it's are you warmed up ready, or you did all your preparation? You just worry about getting into the tournament.
Well, you're closer to the prize or closer to that podium the deeper you get into the tournament.
Sure, I think that's true.
Yeah. And what do you realistically, what do you think with the 5 guys you got? You mentioned you think some of them can advance and go on through and maybe get to All-American on. That's a legitimate hope with you, right, with these 5 guys?
Well, I think all in different ways. I think all 5 have an opportunity to be on that podium. I think they are well seasoned. They've had very good success. You start with Donnie and Brandon, who have been to the national tournament 2-3. This is the 4th time for Donnie. That there's no surprise for them, and they're dangerous. They're both dangerous. So, if things fall right and they get their best wrestling out, absolutely. Panese is a freshman, and he's wrestled extremely well in all the national tournaments he's competed. So I think he's going with an unusual poise for a freshman, kind of like sending Brandon Rader, where he recognizes he has competed really well, and he does a great job of just getting himself ready to wrestle. So I don't worry about any of these 5 not being ready to wrestle. It's just like any competition, you need to wrestle well, and you need to be a little lucky too. So hopefully we get that.
That last thing here, you've got guys that maybe are under the radar, that have experience but maybe aren't seeded or under the radar. So that's always nice to be able to go in without that extra pressure, I guess, right?
Yeah, but at this level, I don't know. And with the internet, before, getting background on your opponents, you had to talk to different coaches, and some wouldn't share information. That now everybody has a pretty good idea of who they're dealing with. That you can see the scouting now that you didn't have 10 years ago. That the coach, you can hear him talk in the corner, watch out for this, watch out for that. That I don't think any of our guys will be overlooked. And most of these guys are well coached, just like what we're talking about, that you don't overlook anybody. And they're pretty aware of the 5 we're taking have wrestled competitively at the national level. They won't be overlooked. We won't get that advantage, I don't think. We're just going to have to go ready to wrestle our best wrestling.